Monday, the 6th of August, 1945. The weather was pleasant and the city of Hiroshima was bustling with people going about their daily routines. Children were heading to school and adults were off to work, blissfully unaware of the monumental event that was about to unfold. At precisely 8:15 in the morning, few citizens noticed an aircraft in the sky. The aircraft was a B-29 bomber, also known as the Enola Gay, appearing overhead and was casting a shadow over the entire city. Moments later, something was dropped from the plane. It fell through the sky and it only took mere 42 seconds before it exploded with a force that would forever alter the course of human history. That something which had been dropped was an atomic bomb, codenamed the Little Boy. In a split second, the bomb projected a blast zone with a radius of 1.5 miles. Anything in that radius was completely destroyed, reduced to utter devastation. A raging fireball was formed which resembled a second sun. The temperature on the ground soared to a staggering 4,000 degrees Celsius, igniting fires and incinerating everything in its path. A colossal mushroom cloud was formed and covered the entire sky. Over 80,000 people lost their lives and tens of thousands were injured in that fateful moment. Now, listening to all of this, an impertinent question would arise in your mind. Why was the atomic bomb dropped in the first place? What was the main reason behind this? To better understand it, come, let's take a dive into the video about the story of why the United States decided to drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
An American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima to save the lives of thousands and thousands of young Americans.
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Our journey takes us back to the start of World War II, when Nazi Germany, led by the infamous dictator Adolf Hitler, decided to invade Poland. This decision of Germany invading Poland eventually drew other nations into the conflict one after another. The conflict of World War II was fought between two opposing sides, the Allied powers and the Axis powers. The Axis powers included Germany, Italy and Japan, while the Allied powers consisted of countries like Great Britain, France and Russia. Despite the United States of America being an ally of countries such as Great Britain and France, they initially refrained from participating in World War II, influenced by their past experiences and casualties during World War I. In reality, the Americans were reluctant to become involved in the conflicts of Europe and Asia. However, the tide was soon to turn as events unfolded, leading the Americans to reconsider their decision. In the context of Japan's involvement in World War II, there's a deeply ingrained ideological aspect that we should explore, one that had a profound impact on the Japanese population during the 1930s and 1940s. This dimension is crucial to understand because it sheds light on the psychology at play. The Japanese government, under the leadership of Emperor Hirohito and the militaristic government of Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, sought to shape and manipulate the mindset of the Japanese people to align their goals of aggressive expansion in Asia and the Pacific. The Japanese population was instilled with a strong sense of nationalism, which was deeply rooted in the belief that Japan was a divine and superior nation. This belief was heavily propagated through the education system, media and cultural events. The government promoted the idea of a greater East Asia, which portrayed Japan as the benevolent leader of Asia, liberating it from Western colonialism. Emperor Hirohito was portrayed as a deity or a god, and the Japanese people were taught to view him as the embodiment of Japan's national spirit. The government also placed immense pressure on individuals to believe this prevailing ideology. Those who resisted or expressed dissent risked social ostracism or even imprisonment. Traditional Japanese values such as loyalty, honor and discipline were altered and skewed to serve the war effort. This intense campaign of ideological indoctrination had a profound impact, driving the population to wholeheartedly follow the directives of the military and their revered emperor. As the war continued, Japan redirected its strategic focus toward the southern part of Asia. Their ambitions were to seize territories like Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. These regions were under the sovereignty of the French Empire, but were inadequately defended as the majority of French military forces were redeployed to Europe to confront the German invasion. Japan capitalized on this vulnerability and proceeded to seize these territories, significantly expanding its territorial boundaries. Consequently, Japan's actions made it an adversary of France and effectively marked its indirect entry into World War II. In response to the aggressive territorial expansion of Japan in Asia, the United States, initially reluctant to engage in the conflict, adopted a strategy aimed at hindering their progress. The USA chose to do so by implementing restrictions on the exports of various resources. Despite the economic sanctions imposed by the United States, Japan continued to acquire vital resources by exploiting its occupied territories. The United States even presented Japan with an ultimatum. Either Japan surrenders all of its captured territories or the US would cease its oil supply to Japan. However, Japan chose to disregard the ultimatum. Eventually, the American government was forced to make a pivotal decision to cut off the oil supply, which became the last straw that broke the camel's back in the unfolding events to come. Oil was the most critical resource during World War II, as it is essential for modern military operations. It powered tanks, trucks, aircraft and naval vessels, making it essential for the mobility and effectiveness of armed forces. Japan, lacking natural oil reserves to fall back on, heavily relied on the Americans for its supply. Approximately 80% of the oil consumed by Japan used to come from the American government. Japan found itself rapidly depleting its oil reserves due to its aggressive expansion and the utilization of its military capabilities. Japan chose not to surrender its captured territories and instead formulated a new plan to expand further by capturing additional territories in the Asia-Pacific region with the primary objective of securing oil reserves. Among the countries identified as good oil producers were Malaysia, Indonesia and the Philippines, which if captured could potentially free Japan from its dependence on America for oil. However, a significant obstacle emerged. At that time, Indonesia was under the control of the Dutch East Indies, and Malaysia was a British colony known as British Malay. Both of these regions were under the rule of the Allied powers, with the United States being a strong ally. Additionally, the neutral nation of the Philippines was part of the American colony. Japan recognized that attempting to capture any of these areas would inevitably lead to a new conflict in the Asia-Pacific region. While the Japanese Navy held significant power in these regions, the United States emerged as its most formidable rival and surpassed Japan in a direct confrontation. Japan understood that risking a head-on battle with the United States and the combined forces of the Allied powers was not a viable option. Such a confrontation could result in potential losses and the need to relinquish previously captured territories. Faced with this dilemma, Japan set aside the previously considered plan and instead devised a surprise attack on the United States, specifically targeting Pearl Harbor, where a significant portion of the American government's Pacific Naval Fleet was stationed. The plan, to cripple the American naval fleet and to further their own territorial ambitions in the Asia-Pacific region. And so, on that fateful morning of December 7th, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise aerial assault on the US naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. At 7:55 a.m., the morning was disrupted by the deafening sound of aircraft engines and sirens blaring. A formation of Japanese bombers and fighter planes descended upon Pearl Harbor. In a matter of minutes, the peaceful morning transformed into a scene of chaos and devastation. The surprise attack had been meticulously planned by the Imperial Japanese Navy, involving a total of 353 Japanese aircraft, including torpedo bombers and dive bombers, which rained destruction upon the American Pacific Fleet. The attack took the American forces completely off guard. Within the first wave of the assault, several battleships, including the USS Arizona, fell victim to torpedoes and bombs. The USS Oklahoma capsized, tragically trapping crew members inside. Hangars and barracks were engulfed in flames, and thick smoke blanketed the skies. The casualties were devastating, with 2,403 Americans losing their lives and over 1,100 wounded. 8 U.S. battleships suffered severe damage or were sunk, along with numerous other vessels and aircraft. The shock and horror of the attack reverberated throughout the nation. In the wake of the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States found itself thrust into World War II. On December 8, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed the nation.
A date which will live in infamy.
The United States officially entered the war against Japan, Germany, and Italy. 2 days later, the Axis powers also declared war on the United States. And now the world was plunged into full-scale global conflict. After the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States was resolute in its determination to seek revenge and bring the Japanese Empire to its knees. The nation mobilized its vast resources, including its industrial might and manpower, to wage a formidable war effort. American forces joined the Allied powers to combat the Axis forces on multiple fronts. The Pacific theater of the war became a pivotal battleground, where U.S. military strategists sought not only to avenge Pearl Harbor but also to push back the Japanese Empire's expansion and ultimately secure victory in the Pacific. Additionally, the United States explored unconventional projects such as Project X-ray, which involved using bats as carriers for incendiary bombs. The primary objective of Project X-ray was to create a way to start widespread fires in Japan's cities, particularly in the wooden structures that were prevalent at the time. The plan involved attaching small incendiary bombs to bats and releasing them from bomber aircraft over Japanese cities. Exploiting the fact that bats seek shelter during the day, they would hide in buildings and structures, and later the attached incendiary devices would ignite, causing fires to break out in multiple locations. While the project was deemed impractical and ultimately cancelled, it was overshadowed by the development and testing of more conventional and effective projects. In addition to unique projects like Project X-ray, the United States was also involved in another significant wartime effort, the Manhattan Project, which played a pivotal role in shaping the history during World War II. This top-secret initiative was launched with the aim of developing the world's first atomic bomb. Leading scientists, including luminaries such as Robert Oppenheimer and Enrico Fermi, conducted groundbreaking research at several secret facilities across the United States. The culmination of the Manhattan Project came with the successful testing of the atomic bomb, which was codenamed Trinity, on the 16th of July, 1945. In the lead-up to these earth-shaking events, President Harry Truman of the United States, along with Prime Minister Winston Churchill of the United Kingdom and President Chiang of China, issued the Potsdam Declaration on July 26, 1945. This critical document outlined the terms of surrender for Japan during World War II. The declaration starkly warned of prompt and utter destruction if Japan did not agree to an unconditional surrender. Consequently, Japan refused the Potsdam Declaration on 29th of July 1945. In response, President Harry Truman, after deliberating with his advisors and military commanders, gave the final authorization for the use of the atomic bomb on Japan. Thus, on August 6, 1945, a Boeing B-29 was seen over the skies of Hiroshima, carrying the world's first nuclear bomb codenamed the Little Boy. At approximately 8:15 a.m. local time, this bomb was released over Hiroshima, unleashing catastrophic devastation. The city was enveloped in a blinding flash, followed by a monumental shockwave that incinerated everything in its path, claiming the lives of over 80,000 people instantly. The blast's thermal pulse was so intense that it left shadows etched into the surfaces that withstood the heat. Those who were outside the immediate blast zone suffered severe burns and injuries, with many succumbing to their wounds in the days and weeks that followed. Despite suffering such a catastrophe, the emperor remained resolute and chose not to surrender. Consequently, 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, the second atomic bomb struck the city of Nagasaki. This bomb, despite being more powerful, resulted in fewer casualties, as most of the Japanese population were told to evacuate from major cities towards less vulnerable locations. Nevertheless, the death toll was horrifying, with estimates of the total lives lost to both bombings reaching around 200,000 individuals. These devastating events finally compelled Japan to surrender, bringing about the end of World War II. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki have left an indelible mark on history. These events, steeped in destruction and sorrow, serve as stark reminders of the devastating power of nuclear weaponry. As we remember these events, we must continue to question and learn from the past to ensure a more peaceful future. If you enjoyed watching the video, please consider subscribing to our channel History Mystery for more stories from the past. Thank you for watching.